Picture this. You're a studio executive watching the emergency exit light up. Every few minutes, as yet another test audience member decides they'd rather be literally anywhere else than watch your movie. The release date keeps getting pushed back again and again and again. And you're slowly coming to terms with the fact that you've just spent $200 million on a movie that nobody wants to see. In fact, did you know that right this second, there are finished films sitting on shelves because studios can't figure out how to release them without losing tens of millions of dollars? The question isn't if they'll bomb, it's how badly and drastically they'll bomb. Blade 2025, 6 years of pre-release flop, that just won't stop flopping. So Kevin Feige announced Blade at San Diego Comic-Con in 2019, bringing out Mahershala Ali to loud cheers as he confirmed the Oscar-winning actor would play Blade in a new upcoming Blade movie. Fans went wild, and it was genuinely an exciting moment because a lot of people still liked and missed the character after Wesley Snipes turned Blade into a cultural icon years earlier. And at the time, Marvel was just coming off Endgame and was at the peak of its cultural impact. And this was also back when fans still believed every new release was a guaranteed hit. Blade was initially scheduled for release on November 3rd, 2023, but that date came and went with no movie. The film currently has a November 2025 release date, but everyone has just accepted that's not going to happen. Because in the 6 years since the announcement, Blade has become the pre-flop that just won't stop flopping. So far, the film has burned through 2 directors, and 5 different writers have taken their shot at cracking the story, with Eric Pearson currently rewriting drafts from 4 failed attempts before him. At one point, the script was 90 pages long with only 2 action sequences. Yep, 2 action sequences in a vampire hunter movie. But then things got so much worse. Mahershala Ali nearly walked away after discovering his character had been demoted to something like 4th lead in a female-centered version of Blade. So, in order to keep Mahershala on the project, Kevin Feige scrambled around to hire Michael Green, the writer of Logan, to start over from scratch. Then there was COVID, quickly followed by the writer's strike that delayed things even more. The budget got slashed to under $100 million, which is shockingly low for an MCU film and a clear sign the studio execs were already trying to cut their losses because they fully expect this to bomb. So, what's the current situation? Well, Mahershala Ali is still attached to the project, and Marvel is still apparently working behind the scenes to get this movie made and released. But 6 years of development hell, 2 directors abandoning ship, 5 writers, and a star who almost quit doesn't inspire confidence. So, whenever this film gets released, I predict it will be a catastrophic flop. And anyone who shows up to watch this at the theater will most likely spend the entire runtime wondering if the final movie was worth all the drama and the incredibly long wait. Lee Cronin's The Mummy. Because Tom Cruise's Dark Universe disaster wasn't enough. After his missing daughter mysteriously returns 8 years later, a father discovers she carries the spirit of an ancient Egyptian mummy. And as the evil spreads to his other child, he must perform a deadly ritual to save them, even if it means becoming the monster himself. That's the basic plot outline of Lee Cronin's The Mummy, scheduled for release on April 17, 2026. And it doesn't sound too bad, right? Cronin, the director behind the well-received Evil Dead Rise, is writing and directing this reboot. James Wan's Atomic Monster and Jason Blum's Blumhouse are producing, the same team behind The Invisible Man, which was a critical and commercial success. Jack Rayner and Laia Costa star as the family at the center of this horror story, and principal photography has already wrapped. So on paper, this has everything going for it. A talented horror director, proven producers, and a grounded family horror concept instead of a bloated action spectacle. But there's one massive problem hanging over this entire project, like a cursed Egyptian shadow. The brand is radioactive, after Tom Cruise's monumental 2017 disaster. That film cost somewhere between $125 and $195 million to make. It spent another $150 million on marketing and lost between $60 and $95 million despite earning $410 million worldwide. It earned below 35% on Rotten Tomatoes, with critics calling it one of Cruise's worst films ever. Tom Cruise basically took over the production, handled the major action sequences, and went about managing the overall film, even though he wasn't the director or producer of the movie. The result was a tonally inconsistent film that tried to be action, horror, comedy, and a franchise setup all at the same time. But the financial loss wasn't the real disaster. The Mummy 2017 was supposed to launch Universal's Dark Universe, a shared cinematic universe featuring all the classic monsters. Johnny Depp was attached to play the Invisible Man, Javier Bardem as Frankenstein's monster, Angelina Jolie as the Bride of Frankenstein, and Russell Crowe was meant to have a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde spin-off. All of those films were canceled immediately after The Mummy bombed. And you know what? It's now many years later and people still haven't forgotten that disaster. The word mummy still triggers memories of Cruise's failed vanity project and a film that was one of the most bloated and spectacular flops of the 2010s. And all of that is the huge amount of baggage Lee Cronin's version of The Mummy has to overcome in order to be successful. Now, Cronin promises this will be unlike any mummy movie you've ever seen before. But promising to be different from past mummy movies is exactly what Tom Cruise's version promised. And, well, we all know how that turned out. All in all, Lee Cronin's The Mummy might just be one of the greatest horror films ever made. It might even be exactly what a franchise needs, but it's fighting an uphill battle against recent memories of one of the most notorious blockbuster disasters, not to mention a general audience apathy for the Mummy brand as a whole. Because let's not forget that The Mummy was already losing steam back when Brendan Fraser was leading the franchise, and even at that time, each sequel was making less than the one before. And that was a decade before Tom Cruise ever got involved. Cronin might honestly just have been better off creating an original IP with this movie instead of trying to work under a tainted IP that comes with so much baggage. Scary Movie 6 has a fatal problem and nostalgia can't fix it. The Wayans brothers are coming back to write and produce Scary Movie 6 for the first time in almost 2 decades, with Anna Faris and Regina Hall, both original cast members, also returning. And the movie is set to hit theaters June 12th, 2026. Now, I'll start off by saying that it's unlikely that a comedy horror movie will ever bomb catastrophically, because their budgets are usually very low, typically under $40 million. But I predict that this movie will seriously underperform, especially when compared to the original movies. And now I'll explain to you how I've come to this conclusion. Scary Movie 5 made $78 million worldwide on a $19 million budget, which sounds great until you realize that was the lowest grossing film in the entire history of the franchise. That movie opened to $14 million domestically, when Scary Movie 4 opened to $40 million. Which just goes to show there was already a significant audience decline and drop-off of interest in the franchise all the way back in 2013. But the problem isn't just that Scary Movie 5 underperformed over a decade ago. The problem is that the entire parody genre died with it. Jason Friedberg and Aaron Seltzer are two people that helped destroy and bury the genre with their string of not-so-great parody films like Meet the Spartans, Date Movie, and Epic Movie, none of which have a Rotten Tomatoes score that's above 10%. And then there's the issue that Scary Movie 6 will be directed by the same person who previously directed A Haunted House and 50 Shades of Black, both of which were forgettable parodies that came and went without making any sort of impact. And this track record doesn't inspire much confidence that he is capable of reinventing a whole genre that right now is completely dead. The Wayans brothers are betting that nostalgia for the first two Scary Movie films will translate to ticket sales. And new, younger Gen Z audiences who might consider watching this have very different comedy tastes. Marlon Wayans claimed audiences will come back because what they do is special, and other people can't do Wayans comedy without the Wayans. But that confidence ignores a basic reality: that Scary Movie 6 is a franchise movie that nobody really asked to come back, and it's trying to revive a genre that's been dead for over a decade, targeting an audience that has moved on. The Wayans brothers returning is the only selling point, and I'm really not sure that will be enough to sell a concept that stopped working decades ago.